Okay. All right, welcome again. Thank you for joining this European Film Factory webinar. And today we will be focusing on the short film program we have on our platform. We have the webinar will be focusing on this. It's in collaboration with FIPADOC, and we have Marion Zarny from FIPADOC to present to us to start with the webinar. And then we will also have three of our colleagues who are also teachers as you are, and they will be following Marion on presenting the educational kit on these documentary short films created by young filmmakers. So I know that Marion will talk about FIPADOC in more detail, so I don't want to get into her territory, let's say. But it's a France-based international documentary festival. I believe they're specializing in non-fiction films and for all screens and all formats. And in this for our project, we have 6 short films that were created by FIPADOC, and this webinar will focus on at least part of them, but I think Marion will also talk about each of those movies or those documentaries slightly. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Marion Zarny from FIPADOC to start with her presentation, and then we will go to our colleagues Kiki, Edmond, and Emilia, who will present the pedagogical kits.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Aray, for the introduction, and I'm super happy to be with you today. As Aray said, I am working for FIPADOC, an international documentary film festival, and I am the head of the campus, which I will let you know in a few minutes what it's all about. I'm just going to say a few words of introduction on the festival because it has some specialities, and what we deal and what we are focusing on is documentary films, but that is a rather large description, I would say. Our festival is unique in the way that it takes place every year. I should start with this. It takes place every year at the end of January. In Biarritz, which is in the southwest of France, near the Spanish border. And it's a rather new festival. We're only starting with our 6th edition, but it followed another festival called FIPA, which had been happening in Biarritz since the mid-90s. And so it's well rooted in the industry and in the region, in the Basque country. So it's not coming out of nothing. But since 2019, we're only focusing on documentary cinema. And when I say documentary cinema, actually it's more than that, because when we invite films, about 180 every year, we are opening and we explore all kinds of documentary filmmaking and all forms in terms of duration. We have short films, and this is what we will be talking about today. We have 2 selections of short films, so about 50 films, but we also screen films that are more formatted for television, so like 60-minute films. And also some of the films will come out in theaters, but we also focus on documentary podcasts, and virtual reality, VR. And we have a strong also connection and strong focus on musical creation and documentary. So all of this makes up for about 300 screenings every year. The festival happens over the course of 8 days, and all kind of audience, people from the area, but professional also, because we have a strong link with professional, and younger audience. And this is what I will be getting into, because this is what is important to us today. They all gather for the event to watch and to document and to discover documentaries. So FIPADOC Campus, which I'm responsible for, is basically the festival program that is dedicated to support cinema, documentary, image, and media literacy among young people. And also we are very interested in, and it's very important for us to encourage the emergence of young talent. And some of the films that you will see, that we will be discussing about today, were made by young people in their 20s, in their mid-20s, while they were graduating, or before, just before they graduated, sorry, from cinema school. So we showcase, oh, the camera is not on. Can you see me? I get messages. Yes, you can see me? Okay, good.
Really sorry about that. Then it's probably something on my end. Sorry.
Okay. So yes, so some of the films that we will be discussing later come from this curation of new talent films, which means films that were made in school. And when I mean school, I'm not talking secondary or high school, I'm talking cinema school. So just an idea about campus. Everything we do, all the initiatives and actions. So our audience is basically kids from elementary school, 7 years old, and then we move on to middle school, high school, and we also have special programs for students who are in higher education and training. But what I'm going to focus on today, and maybe give just a few highlights on what we do and what might interest you today, is the different programs that we run for high schools and students. One of our flagship initiative is the Young Europeans Jury. And so we choose every year seven young students who represent the countries in Europe. Last year we had a student from Spain, Germany, Finland, Macedonia, North Macedonia, France, Belgium, and Hungary. So that made up a quite interesting mix of students coming from their region. And they were all gathered and they had to reward a film in the European Stories selection. Because what is very important for us, FIPADOC, is part of our DNA is European films, European filmmakers, but the audience also, the young audience, we try and gather as many points of view from Europe. So there's this Young Europeans Jury that I wanted to tell you about. And also we organize for teachers what we call doc streams. Is every year we choose 5 films from the whole selection of films. So we have about 180 films, and we pick up 5 that we think it's feature films, so between 60 minutes and an hour and a half, films that we think, whether by their themes or the audiovisual language, the sound or the form, that would be very interesting for teenagers. And for these 5 films, we provide teachers with pedagogical kits, like educational pamphlets, about that. We dig in more into the films, about the context of the film. We also have, for example, analysis of different sequences in the film. And so the students, they come to Biarritz, they watch the film, they meet the filmmakers, and then when they go back to school, we have different activities for them. So this educational pamphlet I was telling you about, but also we bring them with small videos where they can meet, or small masterclasses where they can meet people who collaborated on the film. So not just the filmmakers, but also, for example, a producer, a director of photography, an editor, all the different collaborators on the film that gather for the making of the film, so that it gives the students an idea of the different people and different functions on documentary filmmaking. And also the teachers will have, for a certain number of time, a link of the film, so they can go back on the film and watch more sequences on special films. So this is about what we do. We our different programs run, of course, during the festival, end of January. Like it's important. We have about 800 students, and this means after graduation, and 2,000 students also throughout the year that we go visit in their school or we have workshop with. So it's a year-round program basically for us. Maybe I can take in questions if you have any about our festival, and otherwise I will let you know a little more about the films that we will further discuss. And in the meantime, maybe I had like a really short trailer of the festival that we can watch now, so you get a better idea with images of where I come from and what we do. Maybe we can start the video. So this was just a little teaser. I can give you also my email. So if you have any questions or if you're interested with a class on some specific work that you could do on documentary, I would be really happy to step in. But for now on, I think we can move on to the 6 films that will be the focus on our webinar and on another coming one. So as Ray said, we curated the selection with the Institut Français. Every year we choose about 50 short films, and 25 of them are made within cinema schools. And we came up with this selection because I think in this selection we can find, and maybe this is because it's student film, so it's not yet professional, or it's not in the industry. And I think this is what also is very important about documentaries. There are very, very different ways of telling about reality and talking about true stories. And the films that we have chosen are very different from one another, either in terms of narrative, in terms of themes, but also visually, and how and also the sound, how it's all created. You have a nice mix. So the first one that we'll be discussing is called My Fists in Euros. And it's coming from Belgium, and we will see the relationship between a teenager who's learning how to box and his stepfather, who used to be a champion. So this is about generation and communication. And I would say that many films from the students tackle on this topic of relationship between the younger ones and their parents or grandparents. Mes Poings dans les Tiens, it's a very simple narrative, classical kind of film, and it's 18 minutes. Then we have The Communion of My Cousin Andrea, a Spanish film, which is rather original. And Brandon, the director, films his cousin during her first communion, and Andrea is in her early teens, and she's very direct with the director, and she's questioning a lot of things and asking where God is here. And Brandon, the director, is choosing a way. He's playing with his cousin. It's like really a dialogue between the director and his protagonist. It's quite fun. I hope you like it. Landscape comes from Belgium, but the director is from South Africa. It's a really short film, 7 minutes long, and you will not leave a museum in Belgium. And the film, throughout the film, you will see and you will hear strangers as they go past and watch a picture, a painting of Bruegel called Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. And the film, you have to be very attentive on the sound. It's very intimate. I thought with very few images, but while listening and letting people talk about this painting, it becomes very intimate and rather universal, I thought. Next film is called Wild Animal, Animal Salvatge. It's from Catalan, and it was made by a young director. And the film is following Janira, who's a 4-year-old girl who lives in the Catalan mountains, and she lives also in her old world. She doesn't really speak proper Catalan, and she speaks with animals, and the film depicts her in an environment with nature and animals. And the director is verging onto the fairy tale kind of mystery that surrounds Janira. It's very poetic, very slow, and super tender film. It works really well with also younger kids. I actually screened it last week in Biarritz with children age 5, 6, and 7. And it was they can really relate to the film. So this was Wild Animal. And the last two films, one is called Seahorse, and it's coming from Germany. And the director is following a young girl, a young teenager who's a refugee in Germany and who had to cross the sea with her younger brother to escape from the war. And the film doesn't leave a swimming pool, and it's all about fears and overcoming one's fears and growing up. It's a very touching film as well. And while the topic of the film is rather hard and harsh, it's treated in a very delicate point of view. And I think a lot of students can also relate to it. And the last film is called I Still Remember. It comes from Hungary. And there again, it's very different because it's an animation film. And it shows two visions of Budapest, the one that from nowadays and Budapest during World War II. So we hear testimonies from the war while we see images of Budapest today. I don't want to say too much and spoil the film, but this is another way to get into a different reality. All those films, European films, tell us a lot about our neighbors and where we come from, history, and what also binds us as European citizens and the differences between our cultures. But I think it's a nice program, and I hope you will enjoy the films. Thank you. I hope I was good on time, and I will pass I think it's Kiki who's starting. Who's next?
It's Emilia.
Oops, sorry, Emilia.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me and you can see me. I'm a teacher from Romania. I teach English and Romanian in a lower secondary school close to Bucharest. My school is an evening school, and I am also an evening ambassador and the coordinator of Erasmus Plus project in my school. I would like to share with you a class activity designed by my colleagues and that you can implement it. Just a minute. I'm going to share my screen with you. The activity is called Tell Me a Story, and it is based on some short films. For example, The Communion of My Cousin Andrea, that you can see the poster here. I still remember, Landscapes, Seahorse, and a seahorse. Yes. So the activity can be worked in groups with students aged from 11 up to 14 if you want to have an easy level of difficulty, or at an intermediate level with students plus 15. Why should we implement such type of activity called Tell Me a Story? Because students can learn about specificity of films, especially the different interview styles and techniques, and also to learn how to tell a story efficiently. In the classroom, you can use smartphones, school cameras, tablets, tripod, and also free editing software like InShot. You can allocate for this activity between 4 or 5 hours, it depends. And also you can use it during your literature lessons or ICT, or maybe religion, or social studies, social education. First of all, I hope you can see, okay, the second slide. First of all, you can invite your students to watch the short films, Landscapes, The Communion of My Cousin Andrea, Seahorse, and I Still Remember. After watching the films, you can start a discussion about storytelling. For example, you can ask them what makes a good story, or when was the last time you heard a story, or what is the most efficient way to tell a story? Are you a good storyteller? Then you can work with students in groups also, maybe in groups of 4 or 5 students, and they can analyze a short film, answering some questions. Maybe it's a good idea to give them these questions if they are at the beginning of using films in education. For example, they can answer the question, what is the setting of each film, or who is the narrator, or how is the story told, why did the filmmaker make the specific film. They also should pay attention to the sounds. For example, what type of music is it, the dialogue, what is the topic of the dialogue, the sound effects or background ambient sounds they can hear. And also you can ask about their opinion. And does the use of sound enhance the film experience? Then the second step of our activity, Tell Me Your Story, would be uh, to create some rules for the interview about filming. They should take into consideration the following: the equipment they need if they want to take an interview, the settings, the questions they are going to use, sound and light. Maybe if you want to help them, you can also provide them a checklist beforehand. For more details, you can check the pedagogical kit that is on the European Film Factory platform. Then, students can plan the interview, also in groups, and then film the interview. Maybe they want to share a certain topic or they would like to ask questions about an event, an important event in their life. It's better for you to assign roles for students. For example, one of them will be responsible for the sound, the other for the setting. Also for the equipment they need for filming. The other could be the writer of the questions. And of course, the last one should be the interviewer. At the end of the activity, after they have filmed their interview, students will be curious and eager to show their performance. So the last activity could be to organize the group performance. And the interviews are shown to the whole class, and the students discuss their filming experience, if they enjoyed it or not. Now I'm going to share with you the trailer of the communion of my cousin Andrea. Let me go to the video, the sound. Okay, just a minute. Okay. I hope it's working.
¿Cómo te gustaría que fuera o vídeo?
Pois mira, o primeiro que quero é que na iglesia, nas imaxes da iglesia, haya brillo.
E logo?
Porque unha cosa sin brilli non é cosa. Unha cosa sin vida non é vida.
Thank you. That was all. I hope this activity will be useful for your students. And I'll pass the floor to my colleague, Kiki.
Hi everyone, my name is Kiki. I'm a language teacher in the European School in Ireland, and I'm going to present some activities which are based on the short films of the catalogue, which is called Young Talents, Short and Dogs, that are available in the European Film Factory platform. So I'm going to share my screen here. I hope it's going to work. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So, I'm going to start with the first activity called History Through Film. This activity is based on two short films, I Still Remember and Seahorse. I Still Remember is a 6-minute animation that presents the memories of World War II victims in Hungary. And Seahorse is a 16-minute documentary that focuses on the story of a young refugee from Iraq who reached Europe by boat, although she was terrified of water. As you can imagine, this is the topic that talks about people's displacement, and we're going to focus a lot on historical events such as the Holocaust and the refugee crisis. We can start a conversation with our students by asking specific questions about the topic. We can talk about past experiences and how these experiences have shaped our lives. We can talk and interview our parents or even grandparents, people that have experienced big historical events and how they have been affected by these events. We can also talk about the factors and the reasons that people have to leave their countries in order to go somewhere else, why they have to do it now, why this is so relevant now. It's a very topical subject, unfortunately. and what can be done to prevent this from happening again in the future. I know this is a very sensitive topic, and feel free to share as well any ways that you might approach a similar topic in your class. Here I'm going to explain a little bit the tool and resources that I've used in my own class. I have chosen some graphic novels. You can see the cover pages here. I have chosen Illegal, Anne Frank's Diary, the graphic adaptation, and Mouse. Illegal and Anne Frank's Diary, I would use them, I think they are more appropriate for younger students in the secondary school. But Mouse, I think that it's more appropriate for students who are 16 years and up. What I would do with these graphic novels, I would ask students to read some of the extracts and ask them to compare the stories that are portrayed in these graphic novels with the stories that they are presented in the shorts. I also find it interesting when students compare the characters, so how these characters in the graphic novels were affected by these experiences and how we can compare them to the protagonists of the movies. Another thing you could do is you can create a storyboard. So the students can add a new scene into the graphic novels or into the short movies that they've watched. Sometimes, I don't know if it's happened to you, I would show some movies to my students and they wouldn't like the end. So we'd have a big debate. How could we change the end? What could we do differently? And I take this as an opportunity to give them the storyboard in order to come up with an alternative end. I can share the storyboard I use in the class. I find it a very useful tool. Can you see it, guys? I hope it's clear.
Yes, we can see it.
That's perfect. So you see the layout is quite explicit. It's very, very clear. The students can draw each shot, and they can even focus on details such as the movement of characters. They can even talk about the dialogue, or if there is narration in the shot they would like to create. And they can even concentrate on the camera angles or the shot types. And at the bottom of the page, you can even give examples about the sound effects that they might have used in their scene. And I'll give you the example of my students because I work at both primary and post-primary level. I'll show you what my primary school kids did here. So the activity was to write a story, and the title was A Night in School. So we were all very excited. We wanted to create a very scary movie, but at the end it turned out to be a funny one. And after they wrote the story, they had to put everything into the storyboard because the final task would be to shoot our own film. So this is a very important step, putting the storyboard together in order to shoot a film at a later stage. So you will see they focused a lot about on the drawings, on the colors. They even focused on the sound. Here, I don't know if you can see it. They say that, oh, we can hear someone snoring because someone fell asleep during class. And they focused on the colors, and they even paid attention to the facial expressions of the characters, of the protagonists. So they knew, and we learned together, that you can use the camera in order to focus on details. So here they even put that we have a close-up. So it was a very interesting activity. They absolutely loved it. They can't wait to start filming. So you see that students got the opportunity to use analytical skills together with critical skills while paying attention to details. So I'm going, and you can see the storyboard can be used with students at different ages. It can be primary school, it can be post-primary as well. Another thing you can do is you can ask your students to do a research project, and they can create a timeline using the European Film Factory mind map tool. So they can reflect on their own country's memories and experiences in order to do a research project or a timeline where they're going to present the history of their country and how their country might have been affected by big historical events, such as a big war, for example. In that timeline, they can use photos, they can use articles from newspapers, they can even use literature or songs. And then, of course, they get the opportunity to share and talk about this kind of experiences. So you can see that film does educate and raise awareness about historical events and social issues, and it is one of the role of teachers and educators to create a feeling of empathy and understanding among students. I'm going to move on with the second activity called Me and My World. All these activities, guys, you can find them on the educational kit in the European Film Factory platform. And if I'm not mistaken, they start from page 15, all the classroom activities. So here we used 4 short films: My Fists in Yours, The Communion of My Cousin Andrea, Wild Animal, and Seahorse. This type of activity focuses more on the film language techniques and the film aspects of the movies. So when the students watch the films, you can talk about film language and you can pose questions, starting with the narrator who tells the story in its short, how the camera is positioned. What about interview and interview techniques? Would they be happy to interview these characters themselves so they can come up with their own questions? They can also talk about the mood of each movie, whether it's funny or sad, and what contributes to this mood, what makes a movie funny or sad or strange or unusual. And they can even compare film genre, or they can compare animation, for example, with the documentary. And now the other part of the activity focuses more on posters, on the visual aspect. So the students will get to analyze the posters. You can divide them in groups. Each group can they can work on one poster, and they can guess the story. They can make the profile of each character based on the poster they have in front of them. Of course, you give them these posters before they watch the movies. You can even ask them to write a script, but it would be very interesting if they would create a poster about their own lives. So what they can do is take a photo. It can be a selfie, it can be any type of photo of themselves, a photo of their favorite place, or a photo of their favorite object, put it in a poster and try to narrate, to tell their own story. So by doing this kind of activity, students do get to reflect on their own lives, because sometimes we focus on more superficial things in life, but we don't have the time to talk about more important things. So we are going to give the space and the time to the students to come up with their own story in a creative way, while they learn about film language techniques. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening, and I'll pass on to my colleague Edmund. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kiki. That certainly was really interesting. So I'm going to share my few slides now, and the film I'm going to focus on is My Fists in Yours. Can you see that first slide there?
Yes.
Great. So just briefly, my name is Edmund, and like Kiki, I'm talking to you from Ireland, just outside Dublin. I've been teaching co-ed students for 25 years now, and I also lecture in English methodology with student teachers at Maynooth University. This particular film is a really interesting one for me, because last week I walked into a group of second year students who are around 13, 14 years of age, and I just posed the question, how many of you would be interested in Thai boxing? No hands go up. How many of you would be interested in kickboxing? No hands go up. Does anybody here know anything about kickboxing? one or two comments from students and so on, you know, and I noticed that the girls are very shy about saying anything about it. Then people start to say, oh, it's cruel and so on, and we shouldn't be watching boxing, etc. So I get a discussion going about boxing and kickboxing and so on. And then to their surprise, I say to them, I'm just going to show you a film now about Thai boxing. Now, the reaction was anything but enthusiastic, you know, like almost a few groans down the back as if to say, oh, do we really have to watch a film about boxing? But I'm doing this by design, you know, because there is a key point that I want to tease out of showing this particular type of film to students who initially may feel this doesn't resonate with me at all. This has nothing got to do with my life. Why would I bother giving this film 18 minutes of my time and so on? So it links up to one of the key activities that are in the film, and that's on page 21, which is what makes me who I am. And I know myself as a teacher in terms of my plan and my learning objectives, this is where I'm going, you know, I'm going to try to get the students to think not just about the characters in the film, but about themselves. And as Kiki just mentioned there earlier, I mean, as teachers and educators, we do have a responsibility to give students the space and the time just to step outside of the madness, you know, of life and the pace of life, which is so fast, and give them time just to go inside themselves and reflect about, you know, who they are, who they're becoming, what their dreams are, and so on. Just to say as well that on page 9 of the kit, you can see it there. There is a nice few points there introducing the film, giving us a little bit of background about the key character there. That's Gabby, the boy, and his stepfather, and the relationship they have, and so on. So his father is, you know, a champion Thai boxer and so on, but he's retired now, and he's quite keen to pass on some of the skills of boxing to his son. But what is really fascinating about the film for me is he's not just coaching Gabby about boxing, he really is trying to coach him about life. And this is where it gets interesting, because when we kind of drill down through the film, we discover very quickly that he does give him certainly a lot of advice about how to, you know, kick and how to defend yourself in the ring. But he's also a father who's there to encourage his son to do his very best in school, to continue with his studies and so on. And this is where the whole film broadens out. It's not just confined to the four corners of a gymnasium, you know, it's a much broader film than that. And I found myself with my students, by the time we'd gotten through some of the activities, there was a real sense that, you know what, they weren't just watching a film about boxing. Like in many ways, they were watching a film about themselves. And at the end, funnily enough, when they walked away from the film, we spent 2 classes on it between the activities and the viewing of the film. I was quite content myself as a teacher and as an educator that they went out, certainly perhaps mindful of the characters they'd met, but I'm confident they went out thinking about their own lives as well, and the relationships that mean something to them in their own lives and the choices that they have to make and so on. So this is what this activity 4 really is about, what makes me who I am. And it's on page 21 of the kit. You can see a full screenshot there of the kit. And I won't go through it all in detail, but there are various steps. And it's great as well with the kits that oftentimes you'll see that the first maybe step 1, step 2, step 3 might be applicable to, you know, every student in your group. And then depending on your group, you might push on maybe for, you know, step 5 or step 6, which might be a little bit more challenging. So, you know, it is flexible. I mean, the kit is not meant to, you know, dictate to you, you must do this step and so on. There is definitely flexibility there. And we certainly need that as teachers, because we know that no 2 classes are the same. So even in your own school, if there were 2 teachers showing this film, those 2 teachers might well, you know, take the activities in a different way and approach them in a different style. So it starts off with step 1, which really does ask the students to create a mind map on the platform. And some of the questions and prompts maybe we can scaffold the students with, if they need some scaffolding, would be things like, you know, what about the people we know? I mean, do they make us who we are? What about the music that you're going to listen to on the way home from school? What about the clothes you're going to wear at the weekend and so on? And we just prompt them with some of these questions. And they can work for maybe 10 or 15 minutes in pairs if you wish, you know, or they can do it individually. creating this mind map, trying to encompass some of the influences that make them who they are. We push on then and we show the film, obviously. And then in step 3, we talk about the characters. So now we've watched the character of Osman, the Thai boxer, and his son, and so on. And there are some questions about their family background. What kind of values do these characters have? Do they share the same values, and so on? And this can provide for really interesting discussion. It was fascinating to hear students say that they could actually begin to identify with Gabby, in the sense that his dad means the very best for him. Of course he does. And he does, in fact, give him some very good advice. But there are some scenes where you can see Gabby kind of resist, kind of push back from the advice that his father is giving him. But at the end of the day, he does love him dearly. And there's a beautiful scene, which I won't spoil, near the very, very end, where you can just see it, visually, by the way the two actors come together, that despite maybe, their misgivings about each other, the questions about the advice, whether it's actually good advice or not, and so on, they do deeply love each other. And it's a very affirming film in that way. So the students then, we enter into a discussion about that. You can have a think, pair, share, where you can get the students work in pairs, as I said, or in triads, or even maybe a jigsaw activity where there could be 4 in a group, and then they feed back to the group, and the teacher, would collate some of the points onto the board. This activity then I found very useful myself, and I gave them out this handout, and you can see it on the top there. I said to the students, we're going to give you some, we'll say, quotations, right? And they're all from Baba. Now, Baba is the kind of pet name that they have for Osman. So I want you to try to explain, what could each of these quotations mean in the film? And maybe, can you tell me something about what could it suggest about Baba's personality, maybe his identity, maybe his values, and so on? So I've pulled these 4 or 5 quotations from the dialogue itself. For example, Baba says to Gabby, "It's the only thing that moves me," from the very beginning of the film, when he's talking about kickboxing. But we do subsequently learn that, in fact, it's not the only thing that moves me. He's out of the ring, but we see that he actually really does love his son. And then he gives him a lot of advice about school and about studying and so on. And he tells him how lucky he is that he has a father and a mother to support him, etc. And that's a really interesting quote there, where he says, "I didn't get a diploma, and that was my only mistake." So the students can take these quotations, they can suggest in their own words what these quotes may mean in the context of the film, and then suggest what does that tell us about the character. A slightly different approach then could be taken with Gabby. And again, they found this very interesting too, where I just made up a few statements myself about Gabby based on what had transpired in the film. For example, he's uninterested in schoolwork, or he's not a good listener. Like one of the characters tells him, "You're not a good listener, you're not receptive," and so on. And again, it's for the students to discuss this perhaps in small groups, and then to tell me what have they learned about the character from those particular statements. It pushes on then, and you can see there are some extension activities. So, that's, I suppose, up to us as teachers to decide if it seems the students are really interested in the film and they want more and they want to develop it a little bit more. Activities 5, 6, and 7 there are kind of looking at the director's choices. What choices did the director make in storytelling? There is an activity there about the title as well. Like, our title is important in the film. For example, when I went in and said we're going to watch a film about Thai boxing, kickboxing, like, they weren't, as I said, they weren't very enthusiastic about it. But when they unpack that and go in behind the title, they take the wrapper off and see what's really in there. It's incredible sometimes how they come out the other end, certainly enriched by the experience. And that's very satisfying for ourselves as teachers. And step 7 then would be, with a class who are keen to move on and maybe make their own films, which I have to say I really love working with students who try to make their own short films, just to give them the title, my goals, my dreams, my future. And sometimes you might give them maybe a week or something where they could work at that at home as well. It's up to you if you want them to work in groups. I know some teachers love group work, and they like them to pair up or to go into triads, as I said. and work like that. But I just have to certainly recommend the film. You know, you might look at it and think, some boys wouldn't be interested in that, some of the girls that wouldn't be interested at all. But as I mentioned earlier, it's not so much about Thai boxing, it's really about ourselves and our identity and how we create our identity and the people around us who have an impact on that identity that we have going forward. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to hand back, I think, to Marion now. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmund, and thanks also to my other colleagues, Emily and Kiki, and also Marion from FIPADOC for their great presentations. And I hope that the participants in today's webinar found them useful. Just before we're getting close to, and we're really good on time here as well. And before we close, I just wanted to add only one more point on the masterclass that is related to the films that you heard today. So the 3 of the directors from the short movies and documentaries that you heard about today. So the Animal Salvatge and My Fist in Yours and The Communion of My Cousin Andrea. The directors of these will be providing an online masterclass on the 12th of June at 10 a.m. And you can register your classes to this masterclass and take part in it and get a chance to talk to and interact with these directors. I'm also putting the information in the chat as well as the link to the registration. And I hope you find this helpful, and we hope to see you again in other webinars as well as the masterclass. Thank you all for coming, and have a good evening. And yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.